All right. Welcome to the book club. I'm Dylan here with my honey princess. Keith, what's up, buddy?
Call me Patch, kid. So I'll be keeping an eye on you. I just came up with that one on the spot. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does, because he does have one eye. I forget, why does he only have one eye? But we're putting the cart before the horse here. We're breaking down some bestsellers, and this week we're discussing 2024's All the Colors of the Dark by Chris Whittaker. If you'd like to recommend a book for us to read or reach out to us about any past episodes, you can visit our website, buddybookclub.com. Send us a message on X or Instagram, Buddy Book Club Podcast. That's where you can find us. You can listen to us on iTunes, Spotify. Please download, subscribe, give us a 5-star review, comment. Nothing else, give us a follow on some social channels. TikTok's back, so, hit up TikTok. Keith's actually posting some fire stuff on TikTok. I'm loving it. 4.33 on Goodreads, so higher than most, which I was excited about. I found out about this book from a friend, and also it was on that list of like some of the best books of 2024. So I think we decided to go for it. But before we get into stock up, stock down, I got a book report ish. So I'm gonna get into that, and then we can keep discussing the book. All right, Keith. I came to this book, like I said, with no background. I'd been listening to some serial killer podcasts, and a buddy of mine says, "Hey, you like serial killers? You'll love this book." And for the record, I don't love serial killers. It's an odd way of putting it, but I digress. I thought I was getting a murder mystery thriller, but instead I got a slow-paced, character-driven novel with spellbinding prose, and I fucking loved it. It's like I'm a baby, which really isn't hard to believe because my IQ is not that far off. And Chris Whittaker is doing the feeding thing where you pretend the spoon's an airplane, and I think I'm getting ice cream, so I'm all excited, but he actually gives me broccoli, and at first, this is me as the baby, at first I'm like, what the fuck, bud? But then I realize I love broccoli. If it's cooked well and seasoned properly, I'm all in. And goddamn, sorry Norma, was that some Michelin star broccoli? We got great characters, great story, great writing. I mean, this was like 5 stories in one. So I'm not sure if this is even a book report. Maybe it's just my quick review. But this is my pirate ship, so I'm making the rules here. 10 out of 10 would recommend All the Colors of the Dark. That's my book report. What do you think, teacher?
Oh, wow. Okay. That was a little bit more informal for my liking of a book report. No. It was good. I think I'll give you a B. You're getting a full letter doc, though, for saying broccoli is good. So that analogy, you lost me there. I got the airplane analogy, and then you're like, what? Wait, what? Broccoli?
Broccoli's great.
But I liked it overall, though. Appreciate that.
You put broccoli on a roasting pan with a little salt and pepper, maybe some additional spices to your liking. I'm a big fan of the Japanese furikake. You throw that on there, roast it like 425, so it's like still tender in the middle but crispy on the outside.
I like crunchy. You give me crunchy broccoli.
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right.
It's cooked, but it's still crunchy. It's got that mix.
It is a little kind of bullshit. You can just give people grades for subjective. Like I just give you a B. Mm-hmm. That is kind of bullshit English class that you got graded. You know what I mean?
I couldn't agree with you more. But at the same time, I wrote a bunch of bullshit. Although I did write, and you know this, but I did write a poem in high school titled Homies, which you can find someone reading on YouTube somewhere. And that got me an A-. And I wrote that after smoking a doobie at a basketball game and thought it was a bunch of malarkey, and they said, "You know what? You're a good poet," and I laughed hysterically. So it goes both ways. Is basically.
You think that most artists aren't smoking a doobie and then producing art? Kid, I think you were doing a good job. Yeah. So
well, not Patch. He's not smoking doobies and producing art. He's crying. All right, let's get into the stock up, stock down. What do you got for stock up?
Stock up movie vibes. I think the big part of the reason I like this book is that there's specific elements from this book where it reminded me exactly of a movie. Joe Dirt, Patch is the poor kid.
That's Joe Dirte to you.
Yeah. He's the poor kid that's like off searching for his missing Grace, but in the movie, obviously, he's searching for his parents, but similar vibes, Yeah. Shawshank Redemption, the warden, the escape from prison.
Yep.
Very, very similar vibes going on there with like the crooked warden and, all that going on there. We got Rudy. I know you hate Rudy. I love Rudy.
Yeah, terrible.
But Sammy is the janitor that gives him the key, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, you can stay here. And he's like, thanks for giving that. He's like, what are you talking about? Yeah, I didn't do anything, Where he's like, won't take credit for it, even though he's doing it for him. Same thing. Forrest Gump. I mean, it's very similar to Forrest Gump. Lifetime story, Patch having a secret daughter, Misty dying and giving him the daughter and being like, this is your daughter now.
Yeah.
Very similar to that. I think, and then what I really think the author is kind of like us, where he's like, what I'm going to write is a serial killer book. But he's like, you know what I also fucking love? Bank robberies. I'm throwing some bank robberies in this book. It's my book. I'm doing what the fuck I want. And then there's like, know what I also like? Prison breaks, which I like both of those things. And he's like, I'm throwing them in also. And he's like, I also like psychological thrillers. Let me put some psychological stuff in here. Like, let's do it.
Yeah.
I appreciate this guy. I appreciate what he did. So stock up, movie vibes, stock up for just writing whatever you want.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, Shawshank vibes heavy. And then Forrest Gump, when he found out Charlotte was his daughter, he's like, I have to introduce you to somebody. I was like, wow, okay, this is, what was that, Haley Joel Osment in Forrest Gump? But this is that scene.
And Misty has AIDS, right?
Well, in my head, I said, all we need is Misty to have AIDS right now. And then 10 chapters later, she has cancer and dies. Sorry, R.I.P. Misty, but it was exactly the same.
Yeah.
I kind of thought, because Chris Whittaker, I listened to an interview with him, and he said his original idea was basically about two kidnapped kids who meet but are in the dark and then like fall in love or something like that, but never know what the other person looks like, and they spend their lives trying to track them down, which is part of what this book's about, but there's so much more. So I feel like that was his idea, and he was writing it in front of a TV and watching like TNT or something, and anytime one of these hit movies came on, he's like sitting there and all of a sudden Michael Mann's Heat comes on. He's like, oh, bank robberies are cool. Like, let's work that in. Yeah. And then Forrest Gump comes on at 1 a.m. And he's like, yeah, okay, let's work that in. I don't know if that's actually what happened, but in my mind it is, basically. My first stock up is Meet Cutes. You introduced me to this term.
Those, yeah,
you introduced me to this term. And you're all about the rom-coms, and the rom-coms are all about the meet cutes. Mm-hmm. Well, hold your hat, Hitch writers. There's a new sheriff in town. We got two totally new, never seen before meet cutes in this book. We have the save your crush from abduction, get stabbed in the process, and get abducted yourself, then spend a year in a serial killer basement just so she'll like you, meet cute. That's more of the long con type meet cute. Mm-hmm. But we also have the spend a year in a dark room with someone, never seeing their face, but through conversation grow to love one another and create a lifelong obsession, and finding them meet cute. So those are two very unique,
pretty tropey, but yeah.
No. Opposite of tropey.
Yeah,
extremely unique meet cutes that Chris Whittaker has created, and each one of those would make a great story, but we get them both in one book, granted Patch is involved in both of these, between him and Misty and him and Grace, but these meet cutes stock up, because all I have to say is I've seen a bunch more rom-coms lately because I've been sick and just my wife's sick, so like these things are on, and they have mostly been terrible in the meet cute perspective, and this just takes it, like, these guys got to figure it out, because these kind of meet cutes is what I can get behind.
Yeah, and the relationship between Saint and Jimmy, no good meet cute, and know what happens there, kid.
Yeah, that's true.
If you don't get a good meet cute, you're not going to have a good story.
Yeah, if you don't get a good meet cute, there will be abuse.
Exactly. That's how it goes.
Yeah. What do you got else for stock up?
Having good mentors stock up.
Oh, okay. I mean, that stock's pretty high. I feel like good mentors is very important.
Because this book really highlights that mentors like Sammy. Sammy is a great mentor. Now, this is a guy you want in your corner. He kind of presents himself as a sleazebag to the world. He's kind of probably, one of those guys you look at first glance and you're like, this guy's a piece of shit. Which maybe he is a little bit. But he's a guy that'll take a bullet for you. He'll go to jail for you. He'll do literally everything for you. He's like a father figure to Patch. Just a good all-around guy. But then we get to the real people in the book that are supposed to be quote-unquote mentors. Mm-hmm. And they're terrible. So let me start off with Saint's grandmother. Just a terrible judge of character. Awful judge of character. She first thinks Patch is a piece of shit and is like, yeah, this guy sucks. This kid sucks. He's like a poor kid that's just like needs help.
Yeah.
And she's like, don't hang around with this guy.
Well, hold on a sec. I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt you in your soliloquy here, but she is definitely saying to some degree, like, distance yourself from Patch, but at the same time, she knows what Patch is doing for his mom. Like, she knows that he's out there hustling, and she's inviting him over and making him really nice suppers and like leaving food for him. So, you know, she's a good person. Let's not act like she ain't a good person.
This is after the fact, but I'm just still saying she doesn't read people very well. Because then, obviously, we know what happens with Jimmy, and she just keeps pushing Saint towards Jimmy the whole time. And she's like, no, he'll be a great father, be a great husband, all this stuff. And he's the opposite. He's just a fucking piece of shit. So terrible job. And what this book really teaches you, too, is just because you're religious doesn't mean you're a good person. And just because you're a womanizer and an alcoholic doesn't mean you're a bad person. This whole like moral compass isn't based off of, you know, how you present yourself. It's actually what you do. And Sammy is a piece of shit on paper, but is actually a father figure and a way better person than the most religious peoples in this book.
Yeah, interesting.
A couple other people quickly go through here. Misty's dad.
Yeah.
I mean, this is day one stuff. If you really wanted her to break up with Patch, just be like, you should be with Patch. That would end her.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what are we doing here? And then also, if I'm Patch, if the dad comes to me and is like, take the money, I'm like, okay, I'm taking them, 100% taking the money, and then I'm still dating your daughter. You're going to hate me no matter what. You already told me you hate me. Now I have more money. What are you going to do now? You know, like,
yeah,
I mean, have the money. So.
Patch pretty much kind of did that in a way. I mean, he didn't. He went back and, you know, he hid it and didn't quit it. I think Patch also knew that his path was elsewhere, and he also didn't want to put Misty through. If him and Misty continued on from when they started dating, they would have broken up shortly thereafter.
Right.
Because
so
Patch was just obsessed. Yeah, exactly. Her dad should have just let it happen naturally, because Patch was so obsessed with finding Grace and his whole thing that there's no way he was just going to settle down with Misty and be happy. You know, that wasn't in his cards. But then saving her at a bar, talking about meet cute number 2 for the two of them, is put a little, how about them apples? Yeah. Well, how about them apples on it?
And the last one, this one's the most obvious one, and it didn't make any sense to me. Nix.
Yeah.
He's a terrible, terrible police officer, right? He's not doing any investigative work at all, like nothing. And Saint just has to keep on telling him how to do his job. And then Chief's like, all right, finally, I tracked down who it is. I'm going to go get him. And he's like, I'm not listening to you. I know it's a little bit of a boy cried wolf situation happening here, but that's literally your job, is to investigate and do these things. He's not doing any of it. Meanwhile, his husband/partner is like doing the abortion stuff right underneath his nose, and he just like doesn't see it. Like, is this dude blind also? He has two eyes.
I think he knew about the...
I thought he didn't. So he put him in prison? What do you mean he knew?
No, he knew about the abortion stuff. The reason why he let him go to prison was because Toombs didn't want to out the women that he had been performing the abortions for.
Up on that, but
okay, yeah. I mean, it's definitely a stretch. I get it. But I do agree that Nix, although a great guy, no question asked, great guy.
And he becomes her mentor. He's like, I should be teaching you.
Yeah, maybe not the best cop. I mean, the fact that, you know, Saint as a child finds Eli Aaron's house and is able to like put those things together. And granted, it wasn't really like that far of a stretch.
No.
Like, this guy's going around taking photos of girls for their school portraits, and he ends up being the one that's kidnapping them. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
That's the first person I would check on, honestly.
Exactly.
Like, when they introduced them as the character, I was like, no, it's way too obvious. There's no way this guy would be it, because they would immediately knock down his door at first. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So
yeah, he's terrible.
Maybe not the best on your part, Nix. But hey, you know what? When it's point blank range, he can't miss.
With his own, when he shot himself in the head? Or
yes,
is he
yes, exactly. Exactly.
All right, spoilers. Yeah.
Oh, yes, there are spoilers throughout. So if you haven't read the book, then... I did want to comment on the religious aspect, because I did have like religion as a stock down, because unfortunately, I mean, we both grew up Catholic, so we're allowed to shit on it, right? Or really anyone can shit on it. But it seems like all the pious folks in this, it's just kind of like a mistake, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You know, Norma, like you said, pushing her to Jimmy because Jimmy's a God-fearing man, and Jimmy fears God so much he beats his wife, and you know, that's terrible. Obviously, Eli Aaron's whole reason for killing all these women is this righteous plan he has, where if they're trying to get abortions, then they should die or get penance or whatever the case is. Terrible. And just the overall fact that Toombs has to do all these abortions in quote unquote back alleys because of the strong religious implications of the town and time. So all of that's pretty terrible. But I was kind of wondering what the purpose of the religion was in the book. Why was that such a big focus? Because obviously, besides Eli Aaron, it kind of like driving his narrative, like the fact it's brought up a lot, right? Religion in general is brought up a lot throughout the book. And I think you had an interesting point about that. The idea that just because you are religious doesn't make you a righteous person kind of thing. I didn't really think about it like that, and I didn't use Sammy as like the other side of that coin, but I think it makes a lot of sense. So kudos to you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's the last time I'll ever be nice to you. My next stock up, pretending you're a pirate. Stock up. It's been some time since pretending to be a pirate was at the forefront of the American culture. Notably, we got Pippi Longstocking and, of course, Steve the Pirate from the hit movie Dodgeball, which I was watching. This is a non sequitur, naturally, as I always do. But I was watching old Simpsons episodes, like the first season of The Simpsons. And the line from Dodgeball when he says, "No one makes me bleed my own blood," is a line directly stolen from the first season of The Simpsons. Bart punches Nelson and Nelson says, "I don't bleed my own blood." I was affected by that because I love Dodgeball.
Yeah, Simpsons did everything, so
yeah, that's true. Simpsons did it. But back to my pretending to be a pirate. Patch brought it back into the American culture. Sadly, his pirate days were short-lived. He went into the dark a pirate and emerged as just a simple man. So I guess the lesson here is if your kid has some sort of issue where they think they're a pirate or a goose or something like that, just get them abducted and they'll shake it off.
Yeah, all right. I mean, I don't get why you wouldn't just wear sunglasses all the time.
As opposed to a patch?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? You're just going to wear sunglasses?
Yeah, I mean, people do that. Cool kids do that already.
What's wrong with a patch? I don't see anything wrong with a patch. Patch is kind of cool.
Oh, I mean, if he doesn't want to be called a pirate, I'm saying.
He did want to be called a pirate, and then he didn't want to be called a pirate.
Yeah, well, but once you're like, it's not cool being a pirate anymore, I throw some shades on, stunner shades on. I wear my sunglasses at night. Yeah, that shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but then, I don't know, then the world's always tinted for you. Maybe be that type of like Bond villain that has the glasses, but one of the glasses is dark.
Oh, okay. I like that. Yeah. See, now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah, I also wonder what his eye looked like. Like, was it just like a socket? And also, maybe because it doesn't affect that many people, granted, people go in for eye surgery and stuff, I feel like we haven't taken the eye patch to the next level. The eye patch has existed for hundreds and hundreds of years. There has to be a different answer, or a different option, perhaps, for people that need to wear an eye patch.
Sunglasses.
Well, I know, besides something that covers both eyes. But... yeah. Why does this band that goes across your head and then it ends in a patch on your face? Couldn't we have some sort of a sticker, perhaps? I guess I got two quick ones. So one is art, stock up for art. We've been stock downing art left and right throughout many of the books we've read, and rightfully so, in my opinion, because I didn't understand it. But this art, I can understand. It's finally a book comes around with some art that I get. Patch is a great artist, so what does he do? He takes pictures of girls that are missing. He makes beautiful portraits of them that are lifelike portraits. Sometimes he has a photo, other times it's just from people's memory. He's like the best sketch artist that's ever existed. Creates lifelike paintings and then hangs it in his art gallery that are then renowned and seen by all. So not only is it art that I could stand in front of and say, oh wow, that's a good painting of someone, and I understand the intrinsic value of it because there's a woman missing that is this person, but then people walking by and are buying it or seeing it, whatever the case is, they understand this is a missing person. It helps with the cause. So I get it.
This is the origins of like the milk carton thing.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's like better than the milk carton, or it's almost as good as that show that we used to watch in the 90s. Like, do you remember that show with the guy who would
Cold
talk
cases?
about... No, it was like this guy who... his kid was missing and never found or whatever, and so he did these like missing children show.
Oh, yikes.
I can't remember what it was called, but it was on like a Sunday night show. It was like very popular.
Yeah, Lois and Clark, nice. Yeah.
No, that's a great show. Terry Fisher, Terry something, whatever her name is.
They're real and they're spectacular.
That's Seinfeld.
Crossover, same thing. It's the same actress.
Yeah. Speaking of which, now that I've been watching a lot of Seinfeld, I feel a bit slighted because I knew you before I started watching Seinfeld.
Yeah.
And
I've stole all the jokes from them.
No, you just stole like a third of your personality from Kramer.
Yeah, that's right. A character, yeah.
I know. It's just like every time I see it, I'm like, it's Keith.
I don't have a personality. I have other people's personalities.
That's like sociopath vibes.
Yeah, thank you.
My last stock up is being able to directly relate to the plight of the protagonist.
Okay.
So usually this is hard to do, and books aren't typically about our boring lives, and obviously this wasn't either. But I do have a unique perspective, as I've also been trapped in the dark. Was it for like 6 hours and not a year? Yes. But was it more traumatic than Patches? Also yes. I was probably
time's a flat circle. If you've gone 6 hours, you've gone 10 years. It's the same difference. There's no different at that point. Yeah.
I was probably like 7, and I was staying at my cousin's place in Tampa, Florida. And then I went to sleep at night, and woke up in the dark. Like, not in the room I was in, just woke up in the dark and was so confused. I said, what the heck is going on here? Where am I? So I started walking around, feeling around for stuff, and I finally found a wall, and I started moving my hand along the wall, and it was like saw blades and all sorts of like tools and stuff. Yeah, no joke. I was like 7. So I freaked out immediately. I was like, oh shit, I've been kidnapped in the night.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I was like, I've been kidnapped in the night, and this guy has me in his basement or something like that. So I kept like moving around, finding stuff. I found a laundry basket and some clothes. So I curled up in the laundry basket and piled the clothes on me and like fell asleep. So hoping he wouldn't find me. And I woke up several hours later, and there was a sliver of light, and I look, and the room I was staying in was next to the garage. I had slept walk into the garage and woke up in the garage, but I had thought I was kidnapped. Wow. So I know exactly what Patch went through.
You're 7, you know what kidnapping is? That's kind of crazy. I would not. All right, fair enough.
Yeah, absolutely. You didn't know what kidnapping was? I feel like that was like don't go into strange cars. Someone's going to kidnap you.
My parents did. They kind of want to get rid of one of us. Not kidding.
Oh, yeah. But basically, I know what Patch's plight is. What do you got for stock down?
Same difference. Doctor-patient confidentiality, stock down. I got to get my biggest hate out of the way. I can't wait to the hates. It's really the only hate I have of the book, because I think the book overall is very, very good. But I kind of wish all the religious stuff and the abortion thing were they just weren't part of the book, because when the abortion stuff started being talked about early on, I was like, I don't get what does this have to do with anything? And then you realize by the end why it's so important.
Was it talked about early on because of Saint?
It'd be like,
is that what you're talking about?
Oh, Roe v. Wade case just passed. And I was like, okay. I'm like, is this just to tell us what year it is? I mean, like, I don't really, what's going on?
Got it.
This seems really forced into the conversation for no reason at all. So I was like, whatever. And then by the end, you're like, oh, I get it, why. Let's talk about tombs. It doesn't make any sense. It just makes zero sense. You're telling me that someone is willing to, go to jail and be murdered or get killed, death penalty wise, to protect people that he gave illegal abortions to, but which is now legal, so it's not even a crime anymore.
Yeah.
What's so you'd rather be known as a murderer and a child rapist than a person that has done something that's legal?
Involved.
Well, I just assumed there was. How does he have a kid?
Well, Callie Montrose was raped by her dad, so
okay, yeah.
That happened.
You would rather have those two things, and then I guess the next point: Tombs could divulge who the serial killer is. He's run into him. He should definitely help the investigation out by not telling them and keeping silent this whole time. He's only hurting more people. So you're willing to protect And he doesn't even need to reveal who he gave abortions to. He could just be like, oh, I was giving illegal abortions at the time. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not a murderer. That's all you have to say, right?
Well, you never know. Once it gets into court, you know what I mean? You got to answer questions.
So you're willing to sacrifice all the future people that are getting kidnapped and killed in order to protect these past people that, what does it matter? I mean, it's so ridiculous that anyone would ever do that. I understand falling on your sword and doing something. If you were really protecting someone, who's he protecting? It made no sense. It just it seemed like so forced in as like a twist, and I was like, what?
To play devil's avocado here.
Okay.
This is a religious community, and the surrounding towns are religious communities. So by potentially outing these women as, people he had given abortions to, he would potentially be ruining their lives.
It's not like they're like, okay, now that we found out that you're doing that, list out every single person you've ever given. Why would that wouldn't happen?
Yeah, I mean, he would have also put a scumbag behind bars in Callie Montrose's dad, who
right,
raped
exactly,
her and whatever. And I think the only thing he could really contribute to the Eli Aaron case was that Eli Aaron was potentially stalking and murdering or kidnapping and murdering girls that had seeked abortions, which seems like that was the case, right?
I mean, a huge factor.
But they did. It's not like they went to a doctor and did it, so you couldn't trace these women by, okay, let's look for abortion cases. I guess maybe you could. It would help for sure. It wouldn't hurt.
Eli, what's his name, was figuring it out somehow, so they would be able to. I mean, the FBI was pretty good. It sounds like based on the book, they'd be able to figure it out if they're given that hint. It was just so ridiculous that you would fall on your sword to protect. I don't even know what.
He would have also been implicating Nix because Nix helped him bury Callie Montrose. Nix knew about Callie.
Just be like, I do abortions.
Well, he'd still go to jail because he killed Callie. And he also felt responsible. I think that was the other factor, is he felt responsible for Callie's death, that he...
I don't understand. So he gave her abortion and she died?
Yes, he gave her an abortion can lead to excessive bleeding, which if you're in a hospital setting, they can take care of. But he's not in a hospital setting, so during that abortion, she died, and so Nix helped him cover it up, basically.
I guess I just didn't understand that part of the book. Okay, that makes more sense. I thought that her dad killed her. No. And that's why Nix killed that guy.
Nix killed him because he knew that the dad was the one that impregnated her.
Well, if that's the case, fine. But he should at least come forward.
On the menu. Yes.
He should have still came forward and said, yeah, I was doing this. I'm not helping him out. This is the guy that's, this. I can give you every single other thing I need to tell you about this one guy.
I get it, but Toombs felt responsible.
Was he released from prison? He was, right? Yeah.
Oh no, he was. Yeah, he was released from prison.
So what was he guilty of then?
He was just guilty. The guilt was internal. The guilt was internal. He felt the guilt.
Yeah, well, then he just ruined a bunch of other people's lives. So, and then we got Saint, who...
So he's selfish, is basically...
Yeah, I do think he's selfish. And we have Saint, who doesn't go through with her abortion, which was like a big twist. And it was kind of stupid. But she tells Jimmy that she's got an abortion, and then Jimmy beats her up, which I guess she wasn't expecting. But like, same time, what's the point of telling him at all? I don't understand that.
Well, she didn't tell him she got an abortion, to be clear. She said she went to the abortion clinic.
Okay, let's not get like...
It is
semantics here on this. But then Jimmy dies. Don't you think the fact that the guy that Patch killed is the one that beat up a pregnant friend of his is important? Wouldn't you reveal it then? Hey, I was pregnant, and this guy who he punched and accidentally killed, he beat me up while I was pregnant. So he was getting back at him because he was so angry and he realized who it was. That wouldn't be murder. That'd be like manslaughter or whatever it was, right?
Yeah, you think she would be called to the witness stand for sure.
That'd be kind of important information.
At least a character witness.
Yeah. But she's like, no, I got to keep this secret. Well, who's the secret for? You're still telling everyone that you got an abortion. Why? What's the point? Like, I understand why you keep it initially to be like, I don't want my son or daughter, I can't remember if she has, to be tracked down by Jimmy and found.
So that was one of my lingering questions. Like, would Patch really get life for killing Jimmy? Because, he's no Cameron Poe, who you obviously know from Con Air, with hands that are deemed lethal weapons.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He threw a punch and Jimmy fell wrong. So if you ask me, it's really Jimmy's fault that he died.
Just not being an athlete. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But also the jury's got to know this guy was a complete piece of shit, not a Christian man that went to church every Sunday and was a zoo guy and all that. Like, that's what they're going to paint
I think
him.
if you put all the factors together in that, hey, he threw a punch, Jimmy fell wrong. Also, here's Saint, who said, this guy abused me and this is my best friend. And yeah, it was a mistake for sure. Manslaughter, whatever. He gets 5 to 10 years maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. I agree with you.
There didn't need to be any twist for the abortion stuff. It should have just been none of that. And the twist is all the serial killer stuff, and him breaking out of jail and all that stuff.
I will agree with you, though, that out of the twists and turns that this book does, that one was the only one to me that felt... You've said tropey before for something else, but that one felt a little tropey. Like, oh, the kid's alive at the end. It's like, okay, well... Like, this really doesn't matter, the story. Yeah. It doesn't change my opinion of Saint, whether she went through with the abortion or didn't. Yeah. So, I'm good on it. Speaking of Saint, my first stock down is Stock Down Freakonomics. You familiar with Freakonomics?
Yeah. Well, I read Super Freakonomics because I wanted to one-up you. But yeah.
You're way too cool for me.
Thank you.
So Freakonomics, for those that are unfamiliar, was a... Steve Levitt and something Dubner, I forget his name. But there was one chapter about a father who named his kids, he had like twin boys or something, or maybe 2 boys, I don't know. But he named one winner and one loser. And the Freakonomics guys went in, turned out winner became a lifelong criminal and loser is a detective for the NYPD. So their point was basically, your name doesn't matter. They went through a bunch of data, blah, blah, blah. Go read the book if you want to. What I say, back to the drawing board, Dubner and Levitt. Saint is indeed a saint. Her love for Patch knows no bounds. She spends her life, even when it's not her job, hunting down Eli Aaron and all the missing girls. How many people does she save throughout? Not only Patch at the beginning, who then, if you kind of tumble that down, Patch ends up saving however many lives. She helps Patch kill Eli Aaron, even though Patch really does the dirty work, but she brings the gun. And, she saves another girl in the woods. She takes on Charlotte as her charge and basically becomes her mother figure. She doesn't abort a baby. What a saint. So yeah, I have to say Stock Down Freakonomics because Saint is indeed a saint.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you because I think the book is meant to make you feel bad for Patch. He had such a rough upbringing, the 10 months and basically kidnapped in the darkness. Everything about him is so sad. But I think Saint's life is a lot sadder. Like everything she's doing is like chasing some sort of Patch the whole time, wanting to be, more than just friends with him and just never being able to get that. Then gets like a husband that's abusive, and then every single next step is like she never is able to fulfill kind of what she really wants. I just felt bad for her the whole time, and especially after she did so much investigative work to find and track down Patch and rescue him, and he was just like, whatever, not a big deal. I'm like, oh. I felt heartbroken for her more than Patch. Patch is a good-looking dude. He moved on. He's a famous painter. He's robbing a bank. He's kind of living like a cool life, She's like, I feel like her life's kind of sad.
Yeah, no, for sure. And she loves Patch. Like you said, she wants more out of that, but also never presses it, is like all, I so felt for her after she saved Patch, and she saved his body, but his soul just wasn't intact afterwards. And she wants it to be like it was, but it just never will be. But then she takes on his lifelong goal. Like, she assumes it, and it becomes her goal, and her entire life is dictated by that. She becomes a cop, and then she becomes an FBI agent, all because of this connection with Patch and her wanting him to want her in some ways. But in other ways, she just loves him as a great friend too. So it's
and even after that too, you would think that she'd be kind of like, well, whatever, like I got to get over this, but she's like reading up on books of like psychological things after a traumatic, like she's doing all this research and reading on like how to help him even more. I was like, Jesus, she's just such a good person. And no one would really blame her if she kind of acted like Charlotte, who I think is not a good character. After the fact, she saves him, and like Patch is kind of giving her the blind eye, or pun intended, and kind of just ignoring her. But she's like, no, like I understand that he's going through something, and it's not like I can't be selfish. I gotta keep on helping him.
Yeah, for all the characters that are very well-rounded and also grounded in that they feel like real people, Saint is almost at times like too good of a person.
Yeah. I wrote that as a note at one point. I was like, there's way too much kindness in this book. Like for all the evil there is a lot of like other side of way too many people being way too kind.
Yeah, there was a bunch of times I was thinking I'm just not as nice as Saint, and I would never be. I'd be like, if Patch came to me afterwards and was like, no, I'm not really that interested in hanging out, I'd be like, you're not fucking interested in hanging out? Are you kidding me? Yeah. I saved your life, you prick. You'll do whatever I want to do. So yeah, like, whatever. It all came together at the end. Do you have any other stock downs?
Last one, Ivy League schools stock down. I thought Ivy League schools were prestigious. I thought they were kind of a big deal. This is a small town in Missouri. 2 people from public school go to Ivies. I thought there'd be parades. You know what I mean? Like this is a pretty big deal. They must have had insane transcripts.
Yeah.
But instead, they're like, Ivy, I don't give a shit. I'll become a cop instead of going to Dartmouth. That's what Saint does. Misty, maybe she went to like private school or something, or had connections, because I know she was rich, but
no, she went to public schools. They went to school together, right?
She's just like, I guess I'll go to Harvard, whatever. It's like she literally could have been rubbing shoulders with like Conan O'Brien. Neil deGrasse Tyson was there. Michelle and Barack Obama were there probably in the 80s
wow,
too.
You're doing Saint level research.
I mean, like Harvard is like, just go look at Harvard alumni. There's like any year you went to school at Harvard, you would be seeing. I looked at these are people I think in the 80s. That's when they would have gone to school or college, right? So like these are people you would have been rubbing shoulders with at Harvard, and Harvard's not like a huge school. It's like somewhat small. So what are you doing? I guess Ivy League schools suck. Never mind. Stock down. Ivy League.
Yeah, it's a good point. I never really thought about it. It's a good point. A couple stock down. Well, I said my religion stock down, so we don't need to do that. And then the last one I really had was a stock down was reading before bed. I don't know when your preferred. When's we're both audiobook listeners for the most part. So when is your preferred audiobook time?
Anytime in the car. I'm a big fan of.
Okay. Yep.
Probably like 4 p.m. when I need to like stop doing work and just zone out. I'll play some games on my tablet and listen.
Oh,
that's usually
yeah. You like to play the like kind of like the
mindless games,
castle building games, or whatever the case is.
Yeah, just anything that's mindless.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a kind of anytime is a good time audiobook
good
listener.
Answer.
Before bed or like going to bed, the wife and I will give each other a kiss goodnight and then kind of put an earbud in, and we're both listening to a little audiobook before bed. Sometimes fall asleep doing it. It's a good way to kind of get into that deep sleep. But I couldn't do it, so it stuck down was reading before bed, because I also grew up as a kid. That was what we did before bed. We couldn't watch TV. I've talked about this before on the podcast, but we couldn't watch TV, so my mom would have us, we'd all, by we'd all, it was usually just me, would crawl into bed. Her and I would have a book and have some tea, and we'd read our books and we'd talk about them, and then we go to bed. It's a great way to kind of transition, and I hope to do the same thing with my child. But at the same time, doing it now was difficult with this book because so much was happening, and especially towards the end. And I listened to a part that I'm going to talk about in a little bit, where Saint goes to the Eli Aaron house, like towards the beginning. I couldn't sleep for like 3 hours.
Yeah,
I had to turn it off because I was like halfway through that scene. I was like, I can't finish this right now. But then I turned it off, and then I'm laying in bed being like, holy smokes. It had me thinking the like, did I lock the doors mindset, which it hits you right. So a lot of this book I couldn't read before bed because it had me up thinking, what the hell's going on? I need to continue reading it. So that just means it was good, in my opinion. But at the same time, stuck down reading before bed. Read like, I don't know, a Stephen A. Ambrose book or something.
Well, I texted you, and you were like, oh, man, this is a book's tons of roller coasters. Like, roller coasters. It was just the whole time where I was, like, on a free fall. I had, like, a rain cloud over me when I was reading this book. Like, I wanted to get done with it so quick because I was just, like, feeling very down anytime I read it. It was a very negative, heavy, dark book. Like, it's definitely not one that I was, like, super excited to be reading. Just because we talked about this. I like to do books that are fantasy, out of this world, because this stuff is, like, real not easy stuff to read. It kind of did remind me of Where the Crawdads Sing, which was like really, really good writing. But like when you're reading it, you're like, this is depressing as shit. Like this is not like, this is like real life, not fun for anyone.
I only saw the show or movie, which was terrible. Let's get into the favorite characters. So I'll give you a list and you can tell me if you're in here. We got Patch, Saint, Misty, Charlotte, which is Patch and Misty's child, Sammy, your boy, Eli, Aaron, maybe your favorite, I don't know. Nix, we can pretty much say that he's not your favorite, nor is Toombs, nor is Norma. So what do you like, one of those or someone else?
Yeah, I already told you. Sammy, yeah. We love you, bye. Yeah, Sammy's definitely the best. I love those type of characters. I feel like there are a lot of them in movies where they're the debaucherous dude, but actually deep down, like really, really good guy type person. So give me Sammy every day.
Yeah, I mean, it's Sammy for me too, obviously, because he's a food guy, which we love, and a pretentious food guy, which I don't necessarily love, but he did it in a pretty funny way, especially when he was asking if whenever he would send food to Patch in prison, he'd be like, did you get the pate? And Patch would be like, no. He'd be like, those motherfucking guards are having the best Christmas of their life. I loved all that. I love the interactions between Patch and Sammy because they both love each other. You know they love each other, but neither of them admits it, and they almost do the opposite and just like kind of shit on each other a little bit throughout.
That's true friendship right there. That's all that
exactly. It was great when he goes like Sammy takes him to a nice restaurant and he doesn't care, but Patch is also almost like picking up waitresses. He's a very enigmatic character, as is Sammy. So I'm very excited to see Sammy in action, like on the big screen or whatever the case is, on the home screen. But yeah, we both love Sammy. What's not to love? I mean, all the characters are great. I like Charlotte. You didn't, but that's to each their own pizzone right there. Do you have a favorite scene or part of the book?
I do, but I wanted to use our reader email because it came in, and it's sure. So I'm just going to combine it.
You've got mail.
This is Emily from Denver. I read this a while ago, but there are still parts I clearly remember. For me, the part in which 13-year-old Patch is held prisoner in the total darkness for 10 months was one of the most haunting, heartbreaking, and beautiful things I've ever read. I get teary-eyed thinking about it. What about you, buddies? So that was Emily's, but to give us a lead off, I actually think for me the rescue part, the emotions there, because one, it was like kind of like an action movie. Like, first of all, 13-year-old girl doing that is wild, bringing a gun and trying to rescue it single-handedly. Again, our girl Saint, incredible. But then you finally rescue him and you're like, the elation of like, we did it. And then where's Grace? Was Grace real? Like, all these negative things immediately happen after the fact. Oh yeah, this is a real kid that's going to now be fucked up for the rest of his life. Like, all these realizations come out after the rescue. That was like dichotomy of like such jubilation to, oh, I guess there's an aftermath of this that's going to really suck. I love that part. So what about you?
I thought for me personally, the book started a little slow. Not that it was bad by any means. It was just kind of building up. And then it just went crazy when Saint got to that house. It was very much like Silence of the Lambs vibes, except instead of Jodie Foster, who's an FBI agent, going into the serial killer's house, it's a child going into the serial killer's house. And everything from her going in there to seeing the snakes, the lights going out, the pictures, the negatives hanging in the darkroom, like all of it felt so claustrophobic and frightening. It felt like an action movie, except it's this like little girl trying to figure this one out and screaming Patch the whole time, which I was like, shut the fuck up. Stop yelling Patch. Like, get out of there. Like, what do you.
Did she start the fire, by the way? I didn't understand that. Or was it
I think
he started it?
The way I read it was accidental. Like, she knocked something over or something went along those lines, but I could be totally off. I don't think she started it. Eli Aaron might have started it. But,
and then you like escaped because that makes sense.
Like grabbed Grace and escaped. I don't really get how Patch found his way like into the woods or whatever the case is, but
that was that Grace brought him out there. That was
right. Okay, yeah, but yeah, so we agree that part. It just kind of set the tone for the rest of it, and it was one of those things like that. scene usually happens at the end of a book.
Right,
and for
right.
it to happen here and then so much more stuff go on. And it sets I think maybe not a theme or whatever the case, but one of the ideas being, how this trauma, this like childhood trauma affects not only that person throughout their life, but everyone within their sphere and sometimes even outside of that. So yeah, I thought that was it was just a really good way to kind of kick off the rest of the story and felt like it would be an awesome ending to episode 2 of whatever this series is going to be or whatever the case is. What about love hates? What'd you love?
To tie it back to what you just said about the childhood trauma,
Yep.
I do think it's interesting to get it from the very early perspective, because a lot of these books is like, oh, that guy's a bad guy, but that's because his dad beat him or something like that, and you're like, oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense. But like, this is like, you see that trauma happen, and then we get 20 years, 30 years of how that impacts them down the road. Whereas if you just met this character when they're 25 and he's robbing banks, you'd be like, well, whatever, get over it, buddy. But now you're like, oh, I get it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it really kind of grounds in that, like, why the childhood trauma is, why it fucks you up so much. Because then when you live it, you're like, oh, I kind of get this now. So I really like that
Yeah,
part
he
of
channeled it pretty well, I feel like, considering he robbed banks and then just gave all the money to missing people's charities.
The other things I liked too is just, I felt like I was part of the story. It was weird because only usually action / like thrillers do I like sit back and feel like I'm watching it, whereas this one, even though is very quick hitting chapters and not like a ton of action, it felt like you're watching someone's life go by, or like a few people's lives go by. The writing was just really, really good, I thought. And yeah, and this is like not my type of book. Like I talked about, like I would not be picking this back up had I known what it was about, like on my own volition, but I'm glad we read it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. I mean, the writing was next level. I thought it was exactly what I, as a dullard, I felt like I could understand that this was good writing. The way that he would
Yeah.
just explain things or adjectives used to describe things. He was painting a picture with it. How does someone know how to do this? And supposedly, like, Chris Whittaker wasn't an author. Like, he was just like working jobs and just like, didn't. I don't even think he like went to university or like graduated university and just wrote part-time on the side kind of thing, and like wrote a couple books. They didn't really do anything. Like, they were critically nice, but no one bought them. And then his last 2 books, including this one, have just like crushed. I hope I have some sort of secret talent that I have yet to unearth, because that's
writing.
amazing.
That's not there. I've gone back and read my stuff, and I'm like,
You read your spec scripts?
I get it. I get why people don't like these.
Other things I loved, Eduardo Ballerini is the narrator, who, for those that are unfamiliar, is Corky Corporale in The Sopranos. He did the Wool books, the Silo series. Yeah, so at first it took me a minute to like get into it. I thought he was very good.
He also did the paint, the stealing the paint thing.
Oh, the
Art Thief, yeah.
Yeah, so it was, it took me a minute to get into it because I just like he was giving such Wool energy off. But yeah, I think he's a great narrator, so I love that.
It's kind of a dreamboat too. Wow.
Really?
What?
I think so.
Anyways,
I thought the twists and the payoffs I loved a lot. We've talked about the one that we don't really love, which is the whole Saint thing. Otherwise, like, these are my type of twist and payoff. It's not a thrillery twist, where all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I can't believe that. But it almost like flows into the narrative, like Patch finding Grace, because some guy in prison knows the town Patch painted, which leads to Patch escape from prison. Saint finding Patch, then both of them finding Eli Aaron, and then Patch killing him, and then Saint letting Patch go. It was all so good and came at you so fast. It wasn't necessarily like a twist as much as it was just like a payoff. I thought like Sammy ending up with Misty's mom, who, it turns out was his childhood lover, was a nice little like twist there. And I guess, speaking of Misty, it got all misty in my eyes when Charlotte and Saint found Patch. He's a pirate again, when they find him in the Outer Banks. And I feel like that was symbolic of him being able to move on from a life devoted to finding Grace and stopping Eli Aaron, because like I said before, he went into the basement a pirate and he came out being like, I'm not a pirate, I'm not a pirate. And then when they find him, he's back to being a pirate. And I was listening to this part in another place I like to listen to audiobooks, which is in the shower, because, nothing beats a good audiobook as you're sudsing up. And when Charlotte runs into Patch's arms, I turned into Tobias Funke, I don't know if you're an Arrested Development guy, but...
yeah, I know you're talking about, yep.
Yeah, it was him crying in the shower.
Crying in the shower. You had your clothes on like him too, though, right?
I don't think he has his clothes on. I think he's...
He's a never nude. There we go, yeah.
Right, he is a never nude. But yeah, It hit me. It hit me. And I thought the red herring with Toombs and also Nyx, but less so, I thought that was good. I know that you're not a huge fan of it, but Toombs initially being involved was like, we were all reading it being like, haha, I knew it, because they kind of led you to believe that he was involved, and then he's involved, you're like, haha. But then it's a twist. And Toombs and Nyx, their love I thought was great. Big fan of them. Ship it, as the kids say. I liked it that the twist, like, this was a thriller for sure. It comes back. It is a thriller. It's a character. It's character driven. Love that. But it's not a thriller in like all of a sudden there's this one twist at the end that everyone's like, oh my God, what a crazy twist. It's more of just a story. Like, that's what I wish more of these thrillers that we've read have, is it's not just some like big reveal. It just feels part of the story. And I do agree though that this Saint not aborting her kid one was the one twist that I was like, we don't need that. We don't need that. Too extra.
Yeah. I liked also Grace being real and being his daughter. For whatever reason, I never even thought that would...
Being Eli Aaron's daughter. Yeah.
Because it made sense why she wasn't... She's kind of brainwashed, too. She wasn't giving away who her dad was. She didn't want... Although, I didn't understand, was she just down there with him, or was she...
No, she would sneak down there.
She would sneak... Okay, yeah, that's what I figured. But
and it was also...
delirious. Yeah.
It was also great how Saint realizes that Grace, in her stories to Patch, is telling him where all the dead girls are buried. She's telling them all the places she's been where her father has killed people. I thought that was super cool.
That was a little far-fetched that he'd remember all that, but yeah, I still liked it.
Well, yeah, a lot of that was that he would remember like the word for word, and that also that Grace would be so, I don't know, well-spoken that she would be able to like create metaphors as she's talking about where these people are buried.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's literature.
Yeah, we'll take that. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
What about hates?
I kind of went over my two hates. I do really appreciate that we're reading Fourth Wing now, since it's such lightness compared to Also, I got to the scene you were talking about. Holy shit. It went 0 to 100 real quick.
Yeah. I thought you said you were 5 hours left. I was like, oh, you must have already read it, because it's 10 hours in, I thought. My hates, and I know I'm nitpicking. I'm going to nitpick here. But the years thing, the book covers a significant portion of Patch's life, and it's broken into sections, which are denoting the years in which, on the whole, I appreciate. It's like, okay, this section is 1977, and then it goes to 1970 or whatever, 1985. But I had to keep going back to the previous section and do the math in my head. How much further in the future did we actually travel? So it was a little bit confusing, but at the same time, I'm nitpicking. Like, I had to go into an app and look back at the previous year. So, but then I do the math like, okay, how old was he then? How old is he now? I did have a tough time trying to figure out how old these people were.
Yeah, I didn't even know what town they were in. I think I had to look it up as Missouri.
Kept talking about the St. Louis Arch. So I was like, oh, okay, Missouri, got it. And then the only other hate, and I really hate to say it, but the short chapters. And I know we can't have our cake and eat it too, because, we're always talking about how we love short chapters and the chapters are too long. But my buddy Chris, you got a little too far. The chapters should be longer than one page. Like, each chapter was literally, there's 275 chapters in this book, and it's like a 600-page book. What are we talking about here? What's going on?
Yeah, so. Chris uses like chapters like I use commas, where I'm just like, I have no idea when to use a comma, so I just put them places that I just assume that's where they go. So he was just like, and that's the end of that sentence. Maybe I should throw end of chapter. Yeah, end of chapter. And then you just go to the next one and you're like, wait, what? But hey, I don't hate it.
You do what I do, which is you say it in your head, and if you pause, then I put a comma there. Right?
But yeah, but I speak like Austin Powers sometimes. I'm like, I also like, comma, to live dangerously. And then I put like dangerous with dashes. That's what you're supposed to write, right? Yeah, we're good.
I respect it. Do you have any lingering questions?
I don't have any, no.
Is Misty Sammy's daughter?
Oh.
Because he told Patch, when Patch saved Misty, he said, you did me a favor by saving the Myers girl. And then also, Misty has no siblings, and it's said that like her parents wanted more kids, but they didn't have any. So maybe her dad doesn't have any swimmers. So it's potential that Misty is Sammy's daughter.
I don't know why, but I was just picturing Sammy was Lenny Kravitz the whole time, so I thought he might be a different skin color, so I think you'd be able to tell, but I could be wrong.
It's funny you say that because I also thought of Sammy as not a white person.
Okay. Was he? I don't know. So that's
I don't know. I have no idea. It does.
Okay.
I don't think it says, but yeah. So when I initially thought about it, I was like, oh no, they couldn't be because like they'd be able to tell. Yeah. So she's got recessive traits.
I like it, though. I like that.
But let's get into cast the movie, because Universal got the film rights, or should I say the miniseries rights, because that's what I think this project is expected to be. There's no real news outside of a few names attached who are the ones creating the series, so we don't know when it's coming out. I mean, this book was just written less than a year ago, or released less than a year ago, so I don't think it's going to be necessarily anytime soon, but it's definitely on the horizon. So who'd you cast? You got any main characters here?
I did. I'm just going to do the adult versions of them.
Yeah, no, I don't think we can do the kids. We can't do the kids.
I bet the movie will be like, they'll show them as 13-year-olds, and then they'll skip to when they're 20, like they're 20 or something like that. You know, like they're just graduating college or whatever that is. I did Saint. I just took from Where the Crawdad Sing, Daisy Edgar Jones. She's the one that plays the main character there. I just thought that character is similar to this, where she's like very, very innocent, but like also super driven. And
yeah, it's funny you said that because Caroline said that as well. She said, what about, because we both agreed that Saint shouldn't be super hot, let's say. You know what I mean? That's just how we both envisioned her. And I think that actress is very attractive, but she was in Twisters too, which I don't know if you've seen that particular film, but they like made her less attractive in that, than what she was in, When the Crawdad Sing, or even she's
the girl next door look is what you need.
Yeah, she's in the Mormon show too. There's a great Mormon show that she's in about a murder in a Mormon town. So yeah, it's funny you brought that name up because we had also considered her, but I settled on either for Saint, Caitlin Dever, who is from, what's that, Bookish, or what's that movie? That like girls comedy movie that's kind of like super bad. And she's also in Dope Sick. She's really good. She's a good dramatic actress. We both liked her in that. And I think she would be a good Saint. And then I also thought maybe Julia Garner, who plays the girl in Ozark. She's like the frizzy haired
Yeah, I like
one.
that.
What about Patch?
I did Lucas Hedges. I think I've casted him before. He's in Manchester by the Sea. Honey Boy. I was trying to find someone that's a little bit more artistic or a little bit more out there. He seemed like that kind of guy. So
I can respect it. I think you need a bigger name though. Like this is going to be pretty big.
Go on.
So I think you need a bigger name. In the interview with Chris Whittaker, and they said, "Hey, who would you cast?" I was like, "Now you're stealing our material."
Yeah, come on. Like, what are we doing here?
And he had a good answer, which is basically like the characters live in his head, so he like can't really say who would be in his cast because like these characters are people in his mind. But he said a lot of people have been reaching out saying for Jeremy Allen White, who I think would be pretty good as Patch, because he looks troubled. He looks like he's seen some shit. And then Caroline had also suggested, who I thought were pretty good. Well, she suggested Dua Lipa's boyfriend, who is Callum Turner from the new Band of Brothers, the Masters of the Air series, who was really good there. And I think he would actually hit pretty good as Patch. I
haven't seen this guy before.
Yeah. And then lastly, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but Barry Cogan, the guy from Saltburn.
Yeah, that'd be a good one. Yeah, that's the answer.
Like he looks pretty. He could be a Patch for sure.
Yeah.
Did you have anyone else?
And then I just said Lenny Kravitz for for Sammy.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The only one that Caroline said we need to cast is Pedro Pascal for Sammy, which I thought was actually fucking spot on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that would work.
And then for Misty, Grace Van Patten. Not sure if you're familiar with that person, but it's tough to find someone in their like late 20s that's blonde. Oh yeah. What do you think? Out of four buddies, what are you giving this one?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna give it. This probably be lower. I'm gonna give a 3 out of 4. The reason this 3 is just again, it's a heavy book. I recommend it to Ellie because she likes these type of books. But for me, it's not up my alley. But it gets the highest mark it can probably get for this type of book. What about you?
Like we talked about this, I was like, I'm so excited to talk about it, and you're like, yeah, it's depressing and whatnot. But yeah, it is. But there's also like the bonds, the friendship between the people. I thought the story itself, I thought it was awesome. Honestly, I thought
Okay.
I don't know if it would hit my like top 10 all time, which I feel like we haven't really touched now that we're like 110 books in. It's like kind of hard. But if we just focus on this year, it's definitely, I mean, granted, it's only February 14th, but it's definitely my favorite book this year. And I think it will hold on to that for a long time. I thought between the writing, the characters, the story, it hit everything. Yes, there's some flaws. There aren't any flaws. So I'd say 3.75.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like a 3.75 would be on my top 10. So it's not going to get my top 10. So I think we're on the same page then. Maybe I'm just grading a little bit lower.
For me, it was like Song of Achilles in that for what it sought to do, in my mind, it did that and more. So yeah, I thought it was
I think it's similar. I agree.
practically perfect in every way, just like Mary Poppins. What do we got coming up next?
We already referenced it, but The Fourth Wing, which is a popular YA. Well, it's not YA after the part I got to.
I thought it was
by Rebecca Yarros. Come up next. I think she just released her third book, so it's hot in the streets right now.
I actually, my hold ran out at Libby, and I was like, oh shit, I have like 2 hours left. And it said, 16-week wait. So I'll be going to the library tomorrow to get a hard copy and just finish it.
I would not want to go to the library and pick this book up. They'd be like, you sure you want this? It's for my daughter. It's not for me. How's old your daughter?
For my daughter? Are you kidding me? I wouldn't say this is for, I'd be like, I don't even know who this is for. And that will be the point of the podcast. I'm not exactly sure.
They're going to put you on a list. They're like, wait, this guy's going to a public library to check out Fourth Wing? I mean, how old is he? He's 38. He's a man. Okay.
The guy next to me in line's going to be drooling, being like, you're going to love that book.
They're going to start calling you Eli Roth pretty soon here, kid.
All right, yeah, so Fourth Wing's coming up next, and we only got a couple hours left, so that'll be coming soon. All the Colors of the Dark. I'm really glad we had this conversation because it's been a long time coming for me. I've been thinking about this book for a few weeks, so
yeah, you had your eye on it. All right, last one. All right.
All right. You can patch that up in post.
Yeah. Stay in.
All right. Keith, I'll catch you for Fourth Wing.
All right.
Bye now.